How important really are all of these AI managers in Football Manager 2024? For example, can an absolutely amazing first team squad carry a manager with horrible attributes? And on the flip side, can an absolutely amazing manager carry a bad squad to become a good one? And finally, what even makes a good AI manager in FM24? Do all of these coaching attributes matter at all? Or are there other factors at play that might make a manager good or bad? In this video, we are going to test all of those questions to learn as much as we can about what makes a good AI manager and whether a good squad can carry a bad AI manager in FM24. So I have a theory for what makes a good AI manager in FM24. And I think coaching attributes are important, but I actually don't think this is the most important thing in FM24. And the reason that I think this is because, especially back in FM23, when Antonio Conte was coaching Tottenham never did well, and Conte always got fired. And especially in FM23, they're not as good now, but he had really excellent coaching attributes, really great mental attributes, and really great player knowledge and stuff. But for some reason, he never did that well for Spurs. And the reason that I don't think he did well for Spurs wasn't because of him being a bad attributed manager. I think it had more to do with the play style. And this is something we can see with Antonio Conte here. His preferred formation is a 5-2-3 or a 5-3-2 with wingbacks formation, which I don't think necessarily works really well in the FM match engine. Additionally, his play style is denoted by these hidden attributes. So you have your general attributes here, but his actual attributes are the ones that define a manager's play style in game. So as we can see here, we have things like how attacking are they? How high is their defensive line? How direct do they play? How much dirtiness do they allow in their team? Are their teams fluid and flexible? Do they like to trigger the press? So on and so forth. So these attributes actually define how a manager instructs his team to play. And in my opinion, this is much more important than the actual attributes of the coach. And for this reason, I have set up a 4-head coach experiment in the English Premier Division to look at coaching attributes, to look at coaching style of play, and to look and see whether a good squad can carry a bad manager or whether a great manager can carry a bad squad. So to start off, I have manipulated coaching attributes for Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp for Man City and Liverpool, given that they are considered the top 2 sides in the English Premier Division. For Pep Guardiola, I have made him very literally the worst possible manager in game. So he is going to have terrible coaching attributes. As we can see here, they are all 1. But I've also changed his hidden coaching attributes to make him even worse. So I have changed his preferred formation to a 5-2-3 DM wide, which as we saw with Conte, I just don't think that really works. And then I've also set all of his hidden coaching attributes to 1. So in theory, this should be the worst style of play that could possibly be played in Football Manager. Similarly, I have made Jurgen Klopp an absolutely terrible coach, changing all of his attributes to 1. However, I have changed his hidden attributes to be more in line with the meta of FM24. So as we can see here, I've given him a 4-3-3 DM wide formation, which is more in line with the meta. And I've changed his attributes, copying his hidden attributes to be a gegenpressing or high-pressing tiki-taka style. Notably, this is a very attacking formation. We have a really high defensive line. If you guys can see here, a lower number is indicative of a higher defensive line. So he's attacking, he has a high defensive line, he triggers press, and he's extremely flexible and pretty fluid. So this is a gegenpressing style of play. So in spite of Jurgen Klopp having terrible coaching attributes, in theory, he should have the most meta style of play for FM24. And for that reason, I think Man City are going to be terrible, but I still think Liverpool are going to be really good in game. But that being said, even with a bad style of play, Man City do have the absolute best squad in the division. So we're also going to see Does this good squad outweigh how bad Pep Guardiola's style of play is? And does an AI manager even matter? Or is it just the makeup of the squad that matters? But I also wanted to test this with teams at the lower end of the division. So we're also looking at Everton and Nottingham Forest to flip things around. We could have done this with Luton, but I think Luton are just too bad in game. Like I tried this with the reloads and they just aren't very good. So we're going with Forest and Everton. For Everton, Sean Dykes is their head coach, and I've made him the best manager possible to see if someone with amazing coaching attributes can carry a team that might struggle. However, looking at Sean Dyke and his staff details, despite having a 200 current ability, I have given him that awful style of play. So his style of play is terrible, and he has that 5-2-3 preferred formation. So we're going to see, even if in spite of his amazing coaching attributes, whether a poor style of play will lead to Everton not being very good. And finally, for Nottingham Forest, I have changed Nuno Espirito Santos's attributes to be absolutely amazing. So he has the best attributes possible. He also has 200 current ability. And I've given him the meta for FM24. He plays a 4-3-3 GM wide, and he has the exact same attributes as Jurgen Klopp. So he should play a gegenpressing, high pressing style that should work within the FM24 meta. And with all that considered, with Everton and Nottingham Forest in this version of the game predicting to be relegated, we're going to see whether Sean Dyke and Nuno Espirito Santo can keep them up. We're going to see whether a great manager can carry a not so great team, and we're going to see how important style of play is in FM24. So that is everything we've got for how this experiment is going to be set up. I'm going to simulate this 5 times, and over the course of those 5 simulations, we're going to see how well does City do, how well does Liverpool do, how well does Everton do, and how well does Nottingham Forest do. And that way we can conclusively figure out how important is the AI manager really in FM24. So I'm going to simulate those 5 seasons. Let's take a look at the results. All right, here are the results from the first simulation. And first up, Liverpool have won. Wow. So in spite of Jurgen Klopp, who is still there, being an absolutely horrible manager, his good style of play led Liverpool to finish in first place. What do you know? And on the flip side, though, City weren't far off. They only finished 4 points behind. Pep Guardiola, despite being terrible, and again, if we look at his staff details, like having really terrible, they finished in third. All things considered, that's not too bad for the first simulation. But looking towards the bottom of the table, Everton finished 15th. They did have 6 points deducted from them. They would have finished 48. They would have had 12. So, Tony Mowbray's the head coach. Why is Tony Mowbray the head coach? So looking at the staff, did somebody get fired looking at the head coaches? Sean Dyche was fired. Oh, whoa, that changes things. So Sean Dyche was fired in January. So looking at the schedule and senior squad, they had a horrible, they were terrible at the beginning of the season. So he was fired in January. Oh, wow, they were horrible. Wow, okay, so this is some really interesting first season results. Because again, if we look at head coaches, we look at Sean Dyche, I mean, he's the greatest manager of all time, attribute-wise. However, his style of play is really bad. And he ended up getting fired, and Everton were terrible. That is really interesting, because if we go back to the Premier Division, Nottingham Forest finished in 10th, and Nuno Espirito Santo is still the coach. Well, some really interesting things coming out of Season 1. So very clearly in Season 1, it seems like the most important factor so far is play style. Because even though Sean Dyche was the best head coach ever, he got fired. And Guardiola, I mean, they did okay. So maybe a good team can still carry a bad manager. But so far, the better play styles have led Nottingham Forest and Liverpool to do better. Let's see what happened in simulation number 2. All right, we are in Sim 2, and once again, Liverpool have won the league. But Man City finished in 7th. Oh, And Guardiola's not even the head coach anymore. Guardiola was fired in March. Oh, and in March, I mean, they had a pretty good end to the season, so they were probably doing even worse. He got fired at the beginning of March. They had a terrible run. They were pretty bad. This is insane. These results are nuts. And Everton, oh man, Nottingham Forest got relegated. And Nuno Espirito Santo is still the head coach. But if you guys can see at the bottom, with 19 points, Everton were relegated. They do not have a manager, which probably means, sure enough, Sean Dyche was fired. These results are seemingly pretty conclusive, although Nottingham Forest also got relegated, although they had 4 points deducted. So if they had those 4 points, they would have finished on 40 and 15th. But Everton and City doing absolutely terrible. This is really showing. I mean, I think this is confirming my hypothesis from the beginning of the video. Play style is the most important factor here for a manager. Because even though, like, if we look at Jurgen Klopp, even though he's absolutely terrible, he still led Liverpool to 2 English Premier League titles. I mean, there is no difference with Pep Guardiola other than his play style. And he was fired. And Everton, who Sean Dyche is the greatest coach in the world, his play style is terrible. This is extremely interesting. Although some big differences in Nottingham Forest. They were relegated versus finishing 10th. So we still need to see if a good coach can carry a bad team. But let's look at the third simulation. Well, in the third simulation, this is absolutely the craziest thing that could have ever happened. I've really messed with the world. Spurs have won the league. Interestingly, though, Liverpool and City both doing pretty poorly in this one. So Liverpool, oh, okay. Well, let's look at the history because Jurgen Klopp he was fired in March. So that's not good. And for Man City here, I mean, Pep Guardiola was also fired. Pep Guardiola was also fired. So, wow, they both had really poor seasons. And then for Everton, Sean Dyche is still the manager, but Everton were relegated, and Nottingham Forest finished in 12th. What an interesting simulation. I mean, from what we're seeing here, it seems like it's very muddy, but in this simulation, certainly a good squad did not carry a bad manager. But I mean, the play style here just seems hugely important, especially in the lower part, because Everton have been doing terrible, but Nottingham Forest finishing mid-table again. Well, this is simulation number 4, and once again, Spurs have won the league. I have messed with Football Manager too much, clearly. But that being said, Liverpool finished in a Champions League spot this time, so that's interesting. Jurgen Klopp is still the manager, so he didn't get fired. So, I mean, they still did okay, all things considered, but I think the big news here is Man City finished in 9th. They were terrible. And I'm going to assume Pep Guardiola was fired. Pep Guardiola's been fired in like most of these simulations, like all but one. I mean, I think this is definitely showing that, at least in City's case, a great team can't carry an absolutely horrible coach. The coach needs to at least have a good play style to be carried by the team. But looking at things at the bottom, Everton barely escaping relegation. Sean Dyche still the coach there. And Nottingham Forest finishing in 14th, doing pretty good. Nuno Espirito Santo still the coach there. So Nottingham Forest consistently doing better than Everton. And I think this is really showing that play style is very important. And here is the last simulation, and Arsenal won the league, but Liverpool have finished second. I mean, overall, Liverpool did pretty well across the 5 sims, and Jurgen Klopp is still the manager. How did City do? City finished 5th. That's not great. And they fired Guardiola. Guardiola was fired in 4 of the 5 simulations. He was fired in February. This is conclusive. A good, amazing squad cannot carry a terrible manager, especially if that manager has a bad play style. A good squad can carry a bad manager if they have a play style that suits the team. But this is definitive. A good team can't carry the worst manager in the world. Also, I just realized Luton finished ninth in this simulation. That's nuts. Oh, interestingly, Everton and Nottingham Forest finishing around the same part. Oh, but they have a different manager. Sean Dyche was fired. He was fired in February. And he was fired here after a run of 5 losses, and they were amazing in the second half of the season. This is so interesting. And Nottingham Forest still has Nuno Espirito Santo. Wow, I mean, what we're seeing here is a bad play style consistently leads to the managers getting fired, while a good play style led them to being fine for the most part. What really interesting results. So there are a couple of things that I think we can take away from this as far as AI managers are concerned. So first is how important play style is. So Pep Guardiola was the worst manager of all time. But most importantly, if we look at the attributes that define his play style, they were really bad. So a great team, as we've seen with Man City, who at least in FM24 are just coming off the back of a treble-winning season, as good as a squad as that is, they cannot carry a bad manager with a bad play style. However, Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp were fairly successful throughout the 5 simulations. And what we've seen here is that despite him being a really bad head coach, we can see here that it's really probably the play style that's more important. We can see here with the play style that Liverpool still managed to be fairly successful throughout the 5 simulations. He was able to keep his job throughout the 5 simulations. So even though he's a bad coach, a good team can carry a bad coach as long as they have a good enough play style to suit the team. On the flip side, it doesn't seem like an amazing head coach can carry a really bad team. Nottingham Forest finished mid-table-ish throughout. I don't think that's like super exceeding expectations. But that being said, Nuno Espirito Santo, who had an amazing like 200 current ability manager, and he had the meta for all his attributes, he did consistently perform better than Sean Dyche. So he was able to exceed expectations, I think, with Nottingham Forest. But I mean, he wasn't like doing amazing with them. But it does show how important that play style is, and having a good kind of forward thinking play style in Football Manager and how it helps teams. And finally, with Sean Dyche, I think what we've seen is that these attributes don't maketh the manager, especially for an AI manager in Football Manager. Really, it's the things we can't see unless you have the editor. It's these things. It's the attributes that define their play style. It seems like play style is probably more important than their actual coaching attributes themselves, because the play style will determine how their team actually plays, and ultimately it's how the team actually plays that determines how well they do in Football Manager. So even though Sean Dyche had the best coaching attributes possible, which is great for a coach that you're trying to sign, as a manager or a head coach, it's the play style that really is more important. So overall, I think what we've seen is that probably the most important factor to a manager's success in Football Manager is the play style. Their attributes are important, and we've seen that with Nottingham Forest and Nuno Espirito Santo. However, the most important thing is definitely the play style. And assuming the play style is fine, a good squad can carry a bad manager. I think we saw that with Liverpool. And as long as the squad building is good, which, I mean, the AI squad building is kind of sus anyways, so you would think that a good team can carry a bad manager as long as the play style is good. In the future, I might test this with different style of plays. Like we really shot down Guardiola and Sean Dyche's play style. We might look at different style of plays. So we could look at gegenpress versus like a counter-attacking style versus a park the bus style. We can add a little bit nuance to the play styles to see what might work best for an AI manager in FM24. So that is everything I've got for this video. I would like to give a massive shout out to @Keshmer, who posted the idea for this video in one of the comments. So massive shout out to you and a massive thank you. I hope this answered some of the questions that you had with your comment. And if you have an idea for an FM24 experiment, let me know in the comments below. I do read all the comments, and I try to incorporate as many of them as I can into videos, and hopefully this will allow you all to answer some of the questions that you had about Football Manager 2024. But again, a huge thank you to you all. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. I hope you all are taking care of yourselves, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.